Hello, friends. If you're curious about the movie The Last Voyage of the Demeter, 2023, you're in the perfect place. Don't forget to give this video a quick like, it really helps us out. And if you're new here, hit subscribe to stay updated on all the latest movie deep dives. Let's jump right in. In the dimly lit corridors of horror cinema, few tales have ventured into the uncharted waters of Bram Stoker's Dracula quite like The Last Voyage of the Demeter. Released in 2023, this film offers a chilling narrative that delves into the harrowing journey of the merchant ship Demeter, tasked with transporting mysterious cargo from the eerie landscapes of Transylvania to the bustling streets of London. Directed by André Øvredal, known for his adeptness in crafting suspenseful atmospheres, the movie promises a voyage filled with dread and anticipation. The story unfolds in the late 19th century, a time when maritime voyages were fraught with peril and the unknown. The Demeter, a sturdy merchant vessel, docks in Varna, Bulgaria, to load a series of large, ominous wooden crates bound for England. The local Romanian workers, visibly unsettled, hastily deliver the cargo, insisting on departing before sundown, a foreboding sign of the darkness that lies ahead. Among the crew is Clemens, a learned doctor and Cambridge graduate, who joins the voyage under serendipitous circumstances after saving the captain's grandson, Toby, from a near-fatal accident during the loading process. As the Demeter sets sail, an unsettling atmosphere envelopes the ship. The crew discovers a woman named Anna concealed within one of the crates, barely clinging to life. Clemens, with his medical expertise, tends to her, but Anna's awakening brings dire warnings. She speaks of a monstrous entity from Transylvania, a creature known as Dracula, who feeds on human blood. Her revelations are met with skepticism, but soon inexplicable events begin to plague the ship. Livestock are found slaughtered, crew members exhibit strange behaviors, and an ominous presence lurks in the shadows. The tension escalates as Dracula reveals himself, preying upon the crew under the veil of night. One by one, the men fall victim to his insatiable hunger, transforming into vampiric thralls. The once orderly voyage descends into chaos, with trust eroding and fear reigning supreme. The captain, Elliot, strives to maintain control, but the malevolent force proves overwhelming. The crew's desperate attempts to combat the creature lead to harrowing confrontations, each more terrifying than the last. The film masterfully teases key elements and major twists that keep the audience on the edge of their seats. The claustrophobic setting of the ship amplifies the sense of dread, as there is no escape from the terror that stalks them. The transformation of trusted crew members into monstrous beings adds a layer of psychological horror, challenging the characters' perceptions of humanity and monstrosity. The narrative crescendos to a climactic battle between Clemens and Dracula, a struggle not just for survival, but for the very soul of the Demeter. The Last Voyage of the Demeter is a haunting exploration of fear, isolation, and the unknown. It delves deep into the psyche of its characters, revealing their vulnerabilities and strengths in the face of unimaginable horror. The film's atmospheric storytelling, combined with its compelling plot and unexpected twists, ensures a memorable cinematic experience that lingers long after the credits roll. If you're intrigued by tales of maritime dread and gothic horror, this film is a must-watch. Its unique perspective on the Dracula legend offers a fresh and terrifying journey into the heart of darkness. So, prepare yourself for a voyage unlike any other, where the line between reality and nightmare blurs, and survival is a battle against an ancient evil lurking just beyond the horizon. The Demeter sets sail from the port of Varna, its wooden frame creaking as it cuts through the waves, bound for London. The ship, a merchant vessel with a seasoned crew, carries a cargo of large, mysterious crates, their contents unknown to all but those who arranged their passage. As the coastline fades into the distance, a quiet unease settles over the ship. Among those on board is Clemens, a doctor and man of science, who joins the voyage after an unexpected encounter with Captain Elliot, a veteran seafarer with decades of experience. Clemens had saved the captain's young grandson, Toby, from an accident at the docks, and in gratitude, Elliot offered him a place on the ship. With no fixed destination of his own, Clemens accepts. However, as the journey begins, He finds himself questioning whether he has stepped into something beyond his understanding. The crew, familiar with the dangers of the sea, are wary but diligent in their duties. Yet, before long, strange occurrences begin to unsettle them. The ship's livestock, chickens, goats, and mules, become agitated without reason, their eyes wide with an unspoken fear. Then, one morning, the men wake to a gruesome sight. The animals have been slaughtered, their remains found scattered across the hold, though there is no sign of an intruder. Whispers spread among the sailors, suspicions mounting with each passing hour. The captain attempts to keep order, but the unexplained events have taken hold of the men's minds. Clemens, ever the rational thinker, searches for explanations. A wild animal, perhaps, or a sickness among the livestock. But then they make a discovery that defies all logic. Hidden among the cargo, barely clinging to life, is a young woman named Anna. She is weak, her breathing shallow, her skin pale as the moon. Clemens tends to her, offering water and care, but as she regains her strength, she speaks of something terrible. An unseen presence, a danger lurking in the shadows. She was not meant to survive the voyage, she tells them. She was meant to be silenced before they reached land. Her words are met with skepticism, but then a member of the crew vanishes. His bunk is empty, his belongings undisturbed. A search of the ship reveals nothing. He is simply gone, as if he was never there. The mood aboard the Demeter shifts from unease to outright fear. The men are reluctant to say it aloud, but they all know the truth. Something is on board with them, something they cannot see. Tension reaches a breaking point when another crew member is found, this time not missing, but lifeless. His skin is ashen, his body cold, with no visible wounds save for two strange marks on his neck. The men whisper of unnatural forces, of old legends, of something beyond the realm of their understanding. Clemens tries to remain logical, but doubt has begun to creep into his mind. Anna, now strong enough to speak more clearly, warns them again. There is something aboard the Demeter that does not belong to this world. It waits in the darkness, striking when no one is watching. It is not bound by the rules of nature, nor does it show mercy. The crew must act, she tells them, before it is too late. Despite the warnings, despite the evidence before them, disbelief still lingers among some of the men. But when the ship is caught in a violent storm, their doubts are washed away in an instant. Amidst the crashing waves and howling winds, they see a figure, a shadow that moves against the storm, unshaken by the chaos around it. Lightning illuminates its shape, and for the briefest moment, fear grips them in a way they have never known. The Demeter sails on, trapped in the vastness of the ocean, carrying a crew that now understands they are not alone. They are being watched, hunted, and one by one, they are disappearing. The fight for survival has only just begun. The Demeter drifts through the vast emptiness of the sea, carrying with it a terror no man aboard can fully comprehend. The air is thick with fear, the crew reduced in number, their ranks thinned by something unseen. Those who remain move cautiously, their eyes darting to the shadows, their hands never far from makeshift weapons, knives, iron rods, anything that might offer even the illusion of defense. But deep down, they know nothing will save them. Clemens, ever the man of science, struggles to grasp what they are facing. He has examined the bodies, studied the wounds, and tried to piece together a rational explanation. But logic has no place here. The thing that stalks them does not obey natural law. It chooses its moments, striking only in darkness, leaving nothing but fear in its wake. Anna, now strong enough to stand, moves through the ship with an urgency born of knowledge. She has seen this horror before. She has survived it where others have not. She warns the crew that their enemy is not a beast of flesh and blood. It is something far worse. It is ancient, patient, and relentless. It does not need to rush. The sea itself is its ally, cutting off all hope of escape. The captain, once a pillar of strength, is now a man haunted by doubt. He has spent his life at sea, guided by the stars and the steady hand of experience. But nothing has prepared him for this. He grips the ship's wheel with white-knuckled hands, his mind clouded with the knowledge that he is sailing his men toward death. And yet he refuses to surrender to fear. If the Demeter is to be his tomb, he will not go down without a fight. Another night falls, and with it another scream. This time they see it, just for an instant, just long enough for the mind to register a nightmare made real. A shape, impossibly fast, impossibly strong, moving through the darkness like a shadow given life. It takes another crew member before vanishing into the black. When they find the body, it is drained, hollowed out, as if something has stolen the very essence of life itself. Desperation takes hold. The men barricade themselves in the mess hall, candlelight flickering across their terrified faces. They speak in hushed voices, debating their next move. Some say they should set fire to the ship, take their chances in the sea. Others argue for fighting, though none can say how. Clemens listens, but his mind is elsewhere. He watches Anna, sees the way her hands tremble, the way her eyes dart toward the door. She is afraid, but not of the thing itself. No, she is afraid of what it means. Then, a revelation. As the ship groans under the weight of the waves, Clemens remembers something Anna said in passing, that the thing aboard the Demeter is not invincible. It has rules. It has weaknesses. If it feeds on them, then it must be bound by something. And if they can find that weakness, they might yet have a chance. The crew moves with urgency. They search the cargo hold, tearing through crates and barrels, looking for anything that might offer an answer. And then they find it, a coffin, larger than any they have ever seen, its wood thick and ancient, bound in chains that have long since been broken. Inside, a bed of soil, dark and rich, untouched by time. The realization settles over them like a weight. They are not simply transporting cargo. They are carrying its home. The plan is dangerous, almost suicidal. They will wait for daylight, the only time they have even the smallest advantage. They will destroy the coffin, leave the thing with no refuge. And when night falls again, they will stand together and face whatever comes. But plans mean little to a creature that has existed for centuries. It knows their thoughts, senses their fear. As the sun rises, so too does chaos. The ship is thrown into turmoil, the wind howling, the sails tearing as if unseen hands are ripping them apart. And then it appears, not hidden in the dark, but standing before them, fully revealed. It is monstrous, yet elegant, its form humanoid but twisted, its eyes burning with a hunger that cannot be sated. It moves like mist, flowing between them, its presence suffocating. The crew fights, striking with axes and torches, but their weapons pass through it as if through air. It is not until the captain, in a final act of defiance, turns the ship toward the rising sun that the creature recoils, shrieking in pain as the light touches its skin. This is their chance. With renewed determination, they push forward. Clemens and Anna reach the coffin, their hands working desperately to set it alight. The wood is damp, unwilling to burn, but they do not stop. They smash it, break it apart, scatter the soil until there is nothing left but splinters. The creature, sensing what is happening, lets out a sound that is neither human nor animal. It lunges for them, but the crew holds it back, fighting with everything they have left. And then the fire takes hold. The coffin is gone. The thing has no sanctuary. It howls, its body twisting in agony as the sun rises higher, its strength fading with every passing moment. And then, with a final ear-splitting shriek, it is gone, reduced to ash, scattered to the wind. The Demeter is broken, its sails tattered, its crew decimated. Those who remain stand in stunned silence, their bodies bruised, their minds shattered. They have won, but at what cost? The sea stretches before them, endless and unforgiving, their fate still uncertain. As the ship drifts toward its unknown destination, Clemens looks to the horizon, knowing that their story is far from over. Clemens is a man of reason, a doctor who has spent his life placing faith in science, in logic, in the things he can see and touch. But aboard the Demeter, reason begins to fail him. At first, he tries to explain the deaths through rational means: disease, some unknown affliction, a predator that they have yet to see. But as the horror unfolds, as he watches men vanish into the darkness, their bodies drained of life, he is forced to confront something he has never considered before. His transformation is subtle but profound. The skeptical doctor becomes a survivor, a man who learns that belief is not just about faith, but about understanding the world beyond what can be measured. He is resilient, resourceful, and despite everything, he refuses to give in to fear. He fights not just for himself, but for those who cannot, even when the odds are against him. Anna carries the weight of knowledge that no one else possesses. She has been trapped in the darkness before, held captive by something no human mind should ever have to comprehend. Unlike the rest of the crew, she does not waste time questioning what is happening. She knows. From the moment she is discovered hidden among the cargo, weak but alive, she is a symbol of the past and the future colliding. Her survival is not an accident. She has seen the creature's hunger, understands its patterns, and knows that it does not kill without purpose. Yet, despite her fear, she is not helpless. She fights alongside the men, not because she believes they will all survive, but because she knows the truth. If they do nothing, none of them will leave this ship alive. She is a voice of warning, a reminder that the enemy they face is older, stronger, and more cunning than they can possibly imagine. Captain Elliot is a man bound by duty, a sailor who has spent decades mastering the sea. He is not easily shaken. The Demeter is his ship, his home, and his responsibility. When the voyage begins, he carries himself with the quiet authority of a man who has faced every kind of storm and lived to tell the tale. But as the days pass and the shadows grow longer, he begins to unravel. The deaths of his men weigh on him, the inexplicable nature of their predator gnawing at the core of everything he has ever believed. He does not surrender to fear easily, but he does not deny its presence either. He sees the toll it takes on his crew, watches their hands tremble as they grip their weapons, sees the exhaustion in their eyes. And yet he stands firm. Even when hope fades, when it becomes clear that they are carrying something far worse than they ever imagined, he refuses to abandon his post. In the end, it is his unshakable determination that gives them their final chance, turning the ship toward the sun, making the ultimate sacrifice so that at least some might live. Wojciech, the first mate, is a man of brutal practicality. He is not one for superstition, nor does he waste time entertaining the unknown. His loyalty is to the ship, to the captain, to the job that must be done. He is a man of action, leading the crew with a sharp eye and a steady hand. But beneath his hardened exterior lies a man who understands fear, even if he refuses to show it. As the crew members begin to disappear, he does what he can to keep order, barking orders, reinforcing what little structure remains. He does not falter, even when the men around him begin to lose hope. But there comes a moment when even he is forced to accept the truth. The thing they are facing is not of this world. And when that realization sets in, he does not run, does not cower. He stands and fights, because it is all he knows how to do. Larsen, the ship's quartermaster, is among the first to sense that something is wrong. He is a man who understands the sea, who knows its rhythms and its whispers. When the livestock is found slaughtered, he does not dismiss it as the work of an animal. There is something unnatural in the way the bodies are drained, something that does not sit right in his gut. His instincts tell him to be wary, to watch the shadows, to listen for things that should not be there. He is one of the few who does not waste time questioning what cannot be explained. Instead, he prepares. He sharpens his blades, keeps his back to the walls, and watches. But instinct alone is not enough against a creature that has hunted for centuries. The rest of the crew, though varying in background and personality, share a common fate. They are men caught in a nightmare with no escape. Some deny what is happening until it is too late, clinging to reason until reason is torn from their grasp. Others turn to faith, whispering prayers into the darkness, hoping that something, anything, will hear them. Some fight, some run, some freeze in terror when the creature comes for them. But in the end, it does not matter. The Demeter was doomed from the moment it left port, and one by one, its crew falls. And then, there is the thing itself. It is not a man, though once it may have been. It is not a beast, though it moves with the precision of a predator. It is something in between, something beyond, something ancient. It does not kill for sport or out of malice. It kills because it must, because hunger is all it has ever known. It is patient, cunning, and relentless. It has spent centuries perfecting its craft, and aboard the Demeter it has found its latest stage. It watches the crew with eyes that have seen empires rise and fall. It does not rush. It waits. It lets the fear fester, lets the men tear themselves apart in their desperation. And when the moment is right, it strikes. Each character aboard the Demeter plays a part in the story, some as warriors, some as victims, some as those who cling to hope even when all hope is lost. They are not heroes, not in the way stories are usually told. They are men and women trapped in a place where the rules of the world no longer apply, where courage and strength are not always enough. Some survive, most do not, but all are changed. And as the ship sails toward its inevitable fate, those who remain know that even if they make it to shore, they will never truly escape what they have seen. The making of The Last Voyage of the Demeter was just as eerie and thrilling as the film itself. It all began with a stroke of curiosity. Screenwriter Bragi F. Schut stumbled upon a miniature model of the Demeter while working in a Hollywood model shop. That single moment sparked an idea that would eventually take shape into a full-fledged horror thriller, diving into the untold story of the ill-fated ship from Dracula. The idea of exploring a chapter of Bram Stoker's novel that had remained largely in the shadows was too enticing to ignore, and soon the project was set in motion. The casting process was a fascinating journey, bringing together a unique ensemble of actors. Each performer was chosen with precision, ensuring they could embody the fear and desperation of a crew trapped in an unrelenting nightmare. David Dastmalchian, known for his intense performances, took on a pivotal role, alongside Liam Cunningham and Aisling Franciosi. Javier Botet, a master of horror roles due to his distinct physicality, was cast as Dracula himself. The role demanded immense transformation, requiring hours of prosthetic makeup to create the ghastly, monstrous vampire that would haunt the ship's crew. Filming took place across several striking locations, including Berlin and the historic city of Medina in Malta. Medina, with its centuries-old architecture, served as a hauntingly perfect backdrop, immersing the cast and crew in an atmosphere that mirrored the dread of the film's storyline. The production design team constructed an intricately detailed ship, making it feel as real and claustrophobic as possible. Every creaking wooden plank, every narrow hallway, and every flickering lantern added to the sense of inescapable doom that the story demanded. One of the most grueling challenges was bringing the stormy ocean sequences to life. Rather than relying solely on CGI, the team opted for a mix of practical effects and real water simulations, pushing the actors to their limits. Liam Cunningham later joked that filming in such conditions nearly killed them, as the relentless physical demands of fighting against artificial waves, wind machines, and moving set pieces made for a physically exhausting shoot. But this dedication to realism paid off, as the storm sequences became some of the most gripping and immersive moments in the entire film. Javier Botet's transformation into Dracula was an art form in itself. The makeup and special effects team worked tirelessly, layering intricate prosthetics that took up to 4 hours to apply each day. The goal was to create a version of Dracula unlike any seen before, one that was not the suave, aristocratic vampire of classic lore, but rather a nightmarish, inhuman predator. The end result was nothing short of terrifying, with Botet's movements adding an extra layer of unease, making Dracula a creature of pure nightmare fuel. Music played an equally vital role in crafting the film's unsettling atmosphere. Initially, Thomas Newman was set to compose the score, but due to scheduling conflicts, the task was later handed over to Bear McCreary. His expertise in creating eerie, tension-filled compositions added a haunting auditory layer to the film. From the distant wailing of the wind to the slow, creeping strings building up to moments of terror, the score amplified the sense of doom that loomed over the Demeter's journey. Despite all the careful planning, the production was not without its unpredictable moments. During one particularly intense scene, a practical effect malfunctioned, causing an unexpected flood of water to crash over the set. The crew scrambled to recover, but the incident actually resulted in a more natural, raw take that ended up being used in the final cut of the film. It was one of those happy accidents that only added to the authenticity of the harrowing experience being portrayed on screen. Beyond the scares and technical achievements, what made the film truly special was the camaraderie among the cast and crew. Though the story itself was one of paranoia and isolation, behind the scenes, the actors bonded over their shared hardships. Long nights on set turned into deep discussions about classic horror, and despite the relentless intensity of the shoot, moments of levity helped balance the darker elements of the production. Perhaps the strangest fact about the film was the series of eerie coincidences that occurred during production. On multiple occasions, electronic equipment mysteriously malfunctioned, lights flickered unexpectedly, and props were found slightly out of place. While most of these incidents could be attributed to typical on-set technical glitches, some crew members couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more at play. A few even joked that they had awakened something by retelling Dracula's story in such a visceral way. The attention to detail in the film's production was staggering. The ship itself was designed down to the smallest historical accuracy, from the rigging to the way the wooden planks aged under the harsh sea air. The set designers researched 19th-century maritime tools and ship construction to ensure that everything looked and felt authentic. Even the costumes were carefully crafted to show the wear and tear of life at sea, with each character's outfit subtly degrading over the course of the film, mirroring their descent into despair. One of the most fascinating aspects of the film's marketing was its cryptic promotional campaign. Teasers featuring haunting glimpses of Dracula's shadow moving across the ship's deck and eerie whispers layered into trailers set an ominous tone long before the film's release. The campaign relied heavily on suspense, giving audiences just enough to intrigue them without revealing too much. This strategy helped build a sense of mystery and anticipation, making horror fans even more eager to see how the doomed voyage would unfold. At its core, The Last Voyage of the Demeter was a film that took a simple passage from Dracula and expanded it into a full-scale horror epic. The production team's dedication to authenticity, the physical and emotional commitment of the actors, and the atmospheric mastery of the cinematography all combined to create a uniquely haunting cinematic experience. While the journey of the Demeter may have been one of doom, the making of the film was a triumph of storytelling, craftsmanship, and a deep love for horror. The ill-fated voyage of the Demeter was never just a passage across the sea. It was a descent into darkness, an unraveling of human resilience in the face of something beyond comprehension. At first glance, The Last Voyage of the Demeter may seem like a straightforward horror tale, but a closer look reveals layers of deeper meaning, hidden beneath the film's relentless dread and suffocating atmosphere. Every event, every decision made by the characters, and every moment of tension plays a crucial role in shaping the film's impact, making it a horror film that lingers long after the credits roll. One of the most striking aspects of the film is how it embraces inevitability. From the very beginning, there is a sense of doom hanging over the crew. The film does not give them a fighting chance against an unknown terror. Rather, it makes the audience witnesses to their slow demise. This structure deviates from traditional horror films, where protagonists typically uncover the truth, develop a strategy, and attempt to fight back. Instead, The Last Voyage of the Demeter operates on a more existential level. The realization that, no matter how strong-willed or capable these sailors are, they are utterly powerless against the force that hunts them. Take, for instance, the moment when the crew first starts to suspect that something unnatural is aboard the ship. The initial deaths are met with disbelief, accidents are blamed, suspicions grow, and tension rises among them. This progression is not just a narrative tool to increase suspense. It mirrors real-world psychological responses to the unknown. Humans, by nature, seek logical explanations for what they cannot understand. When crew members disappear or are found drained of blood, the logical mind clings to rationality, attributing it to disease, sabotage, or anything but the supernatural. This denial is one of the most chilling aspects of the film because it reflects the way people react to crisis in real life. By the time the crew fully accepts that they are being hunted by something beyond human comprehension, it is already too late. One of the most significant turning points in the film is the death of the ship's doctor, Clemens. His character serves as a bridge between skepticism and acceptance, and his fate is particularly tragic. From a critical perspective, Clemens represents intelligence and reason, two traits that are often positioned as tools for survival in horror films. Yet here, they prove useless. No amount of medical knowledge can explain what Dracula is. No scientific reasoning can defeat him. Clemens is not killed because of arrogance or ignorance, as is often the case with characters in horror films. He is killed despite his efforts, which sends a chilling message. Sometimes, knowledge and rationality are not enough to save you. Another crucial moment is the crew's desperate plan to fight back. When they finally recognize Dracula as the source of their doom, they devise a strategy to contain him, to set a trap, to use their remaining strength to defeat him before he claims them all. In another film, this would be the point where the protagonists rally together, outsmart their enemy, and claim victory against all odds. But The Last Voyage of the Demeter is not that kind of story. The crew's plan fails. Their weapons are useless. Their strategy falls apart. This moment is devastating because it strips away the last vestiges of hope. It forces the audience to accept that this is not a story of triumph, but of survival, if even that is possible. The film's cinematography plays an essential role in reinforcing this sense of doom. The use of darkness is not just a stylistic choice, it is a thematic one. Shadows consume the screen, making the ship feel more like a floating coffin than a vessel of passage. The limited sources of light, lanterns, moonlight filtering through the sails, create a sense of isolation. There is no safety, no space where the crew can truly see what is hunting them. Dracula is not just a physical entity, he is the darkness itself. The use of darkness is not just a stylistic choice, it is a thematic one. Shadows consume the screen, making the ship feel more like a floating coffin than a vessel of passage. The limited sources of light, lanterns, moonlight filtering through the sails, create a sense of isolation. There is no safety, no space where the crew can truly see what is hunting them. Dracula is not just a physical entity, he is the darkness itself. Every frame drenched in shadow reminds us that this horror is omnipresent, lurking, waiting. This brings us to the film's most powerful emotional resonance, fear of the unknown. Dracula, in this version, is not the suave, charismatic figure of past adaptations. He is a force of nature, a creature with no humanity left. This is a significant departure from other portrayals of the vampire legend, where Dracula often retains a degree of intelligence and seduction. Here, he is a beast. This choice elevates the horror because it removes any possibility of negotiation. The crew cannot reason with him. They cannot appeal to his humanity. There is none. The fear in this film is not just about being hunted, it is about being confronted with something that is utterly indifferent to human suffering. The emotional weight of the film is heightened by its pacing. The slow build-up allows the dread to settle in, forcing the audience to sit with the characters' growing realization of their fate. Every loss is felt deeply, not just because of the gruesome nature of the deaths, but because of the inevitability of them. Even as the audience hopes for some miraculous escape, the film makes it clear that there will be none. This slow, methodical stripping away of hope is what makes the horror so effective. Perhaps the most haunting moment of all is the final scene. The Demeter, once a sturdy vessel, is now a ghost ship, drifting towards its doomed destination. There is no fanfare, no dramatic last stand, just silence and the weight of what has transpired. The ship reaches the shores of England, empty, save for the remnants of a horror no one will ever truly understand. This ending is what cements The Last Voyage of the Demeter as a film that is not just about survival, but about inevitability. It leaves the audience with a lingering sense of unease because it offers no comfort, no reassurance that such horrors can be escaped. From a critical standpoint, this film is a masterclass in atmospheric horror. It does not rely on cheap jump scares or over-the-top violence to create fear. Instead, it builds its terror through pacing, cinematography, and an unrelenting sense of helplessness. It taps into a primal fear, the fear of being trapped, of being hunted, of knowing that no matter what you do, you cannot escape. It is a film that does not just scare its audience. It unsettles them, leaving them with the kind of dread that lingers long after they have left the theater. This is why The Last Voyage of the Demeter stands out in the horror genre. It is not just a film about Dracula, it is a film about doom. It is about the fragility of human strength in the face of the unknown. It is about what happens when there is no savior, no last-minute escape. It is, at its core, a film about facing the darkness and realizing that the darkness does not care. And that, perhaps, is the most terrifying thing of all. The making of The Last Voyage of the Demeter was as much a journey into the unknown as the film itself. A passion project that took years to bring to life, it was a production filled with challenges, fascinating creative decisions, and behind-the-scenes moments that added layers of depth to the final film. Every set piece, every chilling moment, and every eerie detail was carefully crafted to immerse the audience in the nightmarish voyage of the doomed ship. From the technical intricacies of filming on water to the transformation of Dracula into one of his most terrifying forms yet, the creation of this film was an experience in itself, one that the cast and crew would never forget. One of the biggest hurdles in the filmmaking process was recreating the Demeter. The ship was not just a backdrop, it was a character in its own right. The filmmakers wanted it to feel claustrophobic yet vast, decrepit yet sturdy enough to carry its crew across the ocean. While CGI could have been used to generate the ship entirely, director André Øvredal insisted on using a practical set. A massive ship was constructed on a soundstage, complete with a moving gimbal system that mimicked the rolling waves of the sea. This allowed for authentic movement, making the actors' struggle to stay balanced feel real. The ship had corridors so tight that the camera crew often had to squeeze into impossible angles, forcing cinematographers to get creative with how they framed shots. Filming on water has always been a challenge in cinema, and The Last Voyage of the Demeter was no exception. While a large portion of the film was shot on controlled sets, certain sequences were filmed in open water, where the unpredictability of the ocean made for an exhausting process. Some days were spent waiting for the waves to settle, while others required quick adaptation to sudden weather changes. The actors, clad in heavy 19th-century costumes, had to endure freezing temperatures and the constant feeling of dampness seeping into their skin. At one point, the unpredictable ocean swells became so intense that part of the set had to be temporarily dismantled and rebuilt to prevent damage. Perhaps one of the most fascinating aspects of the film was the transformation of Dracula. The version of the vampire seen in The Last Voyage of the Demeter is far removed from the traditional image of a caped aristocrat. This Dracula is a creature of nightmare, feral, animalistic, and stripped of any human qualities. The process of bringing him to life was a meticulous blend of prosthetics, animatronics, and digital effects. The role of Dracula was played by Javier Botet, an actor well known for his work in horror films, particularly for portraying unervingly tall and gaunt creatures. His natural physique, combined with extensive prosthetics, made Dracula's appearance even more haunting. The makeup process took several hours each day, requiring layers of latex and silicone to create the skeletal, bat-like features of the monster. Special contact lenses were designed to give his eyes an inhuman glow, while animatronic facial pieces allowed for subtle, unnatural movements that made Dracula's expressions even more terrifying. The sound design played an equally crucial role in shaping the horror of the film. The challenge was to create an auditory experience that heightened the tension, making Dracula's presence known even when he was not visible. Instead of relying on traditional vampire tropes like flapping wings or echoing footsteps, the team experimented with unsettling sounds, distorted animal growls, the faint rustling of fabric in the darkness, even the distant creak of the ship's wooden beams, as if Dracula's presence itself was warping the environment around him. But while Dracula was the heart of the horror, it was the atmosphere of the Last Voyage of the Demeter that truly set it apart. Cinematographer Tom Stern, known for his work on dark and atmospheric films, brought his expertise to the table, using lighting to shape the oppressive mood of the film. The lighting was deliberately minimal, often relying on natural sources like lanterns and moonlight. But while Dracula was the heart of the horror, it was the atmosphere of the Last Voyage of the Demeter that truly set it apart. Cinematographer Tom Stern, known for his work on dark and atmospheric films, brought his expertise to the table, using lighting to shape the oppressive mood of the film. The lighting was deliberately minimal, often relying on natural sources like lanterns and moonlight. This not only added to the film's realism but also forced the audience's eyes to search the shadows, creating a subconscious sense of unease. There was a constant contrast between warm candlelight and the cold, endless dark, reinforcing the idea that safety was fleeting, and danger was always lurking just beyond sight. The color palette was another carefully curated element of the film's visual language. Washed-out blues, deep grays, and sickly yellows dominated the scenes, giving the film a sense of decay and inevitability. The idea was to make the ship feel more like a floating tomb than a functioning vessel, with each scene growing progressively darker as the journey spiraled toward doom. For the cast, the shoot was physically and emotionally grueling. Corey Hawkins, who played Clemens, often spoke about the psychological toll of being immersed in such an oppressive setting. The weight of playing a character who slowly realizes he is doomed was a challenge, especially when surrounded by a set designed to make the actors feel trapped. Many of the cast members avoided spending time off-set between takes, preferring to stay in the environment to maintain the sense of claustrophobia and paranoia. But it wasn't all darkness and despair behind the scenes. Despite the grim tone of the film, the cast and crew found moments of levity to break the tension. One particularly amusing incident involved Javier Botet, still in full Dracula makeup, sneaking up behind unsuspecting crew members and scaring them between takes. On another occasion, the team decided to have a surprise birthday celebration for one of the actors in the middle of a particularly harrowing night shoot. The result? A bizarre and hilarious sight. Dracula himself, illuminated by candlelight, singing Happy Birthday in the eerie silence of the Demeter. Beyond the set, The Last Voyage of the Demeter was a passion project that had been in development for over 2 decades. Writers and filmmakers had attempted multiple versions of the story, each trying to find the right balance between historical accuracy and gothic horror. It wasn't until Øvredal came on board that the film finally gained momentum. His vision of Dracula as a purely monstrous entity, combined with a relentless sense of dread, was what ultimately shaped the final version of the film. The budget of The Last Voyage of the Demeter was carefully managed to prioritize practical effects and immersive set design. Unlike many modern horror films that lean heavily on digital effects, the filmmakers pushed for as much physicality as possible. From real firelit torches to fully constructed ship interiors, the goal was to make the actors feel like they were truly trapped on a doomed vessel. This commitment to realism is part of what makes the film's horror so effective. It feels tangible, immediate, and inescapable. Despite its niche concept, The Last Voyage of the Demeter found an audience that appreciated its dedication to atmospheric horror. The film's reception was marked by praise for its cinematography, creature design, and oppressive sense of dread. While some viewers were unprepared for its slow-burn nature, others recognized it as a refreshing departure from the standard vampire fare. The making of The Last Voyage of the Demeter was not just about telling a story, it was about crafting an experience. Every detail, from the ship's creaking timbers to the suffocating darkness, was designed to pull the audience into its nightmare. It is a film that respects the power of atmosphere, proving that horror does not need to rely on jump scares or excessive gore to leave a lasting impact. In the end, the film's production mirrored its own themes, a long and treacherous journey, filled with obstacles and uncertainties, leading to an unforgettable final destination. The Demeter may have never reached its port safely, but its story will continue to drift through the dark waters of cinematic history, haunting audiences for years to come. The setting of the Last Voyage of the Demeter is not just a backdrop. It is an active force in the story, shaping the tension, enhancing the horror, and immersing the audience in a nightmarish journey at sea. From the moment the ship departs from Varna, the Demeter becomes a floating prison, a vessel isolated from the rest of the world, where the crew is left to face an unseen terror lurking in the shadows. The filmmakers treated the ship as a living, breathing entity, one that groaned under the weight of its dark secret, creaked in protest against the waves, and slowly decayed as death spread through its decks. Every element of the setting, from the claustrophobic interiors to the eerie vastness of the ocean, was carefully crafted to reinforce the film's oppressive and unrelenting atmosphere. The Demeter itself is one of the most striking elements of the film. The production team meticulously constructed a full-scale ship to ensure authenticity, building a vessel that felt old, worn, and heavy with history. Every wooden plank seemed to hold the weight of past voyages, and the dimly lit corridors created a sense of suffocation. Unlike the grand ships of adventure films, this was not a place of discovery or exploration. It was a tomb waiting to be filled. The tight spaces forced characters into close quarters, making every encounter with Dracula feel even more immediate and inescapable. There was no place to run, no high-tech weaponry to fight back, just desperation and dwindling hope. One of the most powerful aspects of the setting is the endless, open ocean. While the ship itself is confined and restrictive, the world surrounding it is vast, stretching beyond the horizon with no land in sight. This contrast creates a paradox. The crew is trapped in a small space, but they are also lost in an abyss of water, with no means of escape. The ocean becomes both a source of false hope and a reminder of their doom. There is no lifeboat that can take them to safety, no passing ship to rescue them. They are alone, sailing toward certain death. The cinematography captures this sense of isolation beautifully. The filmmakers used wide shots to emphasize the Demeter's smallness against the vast ocean, making it look insignificant against the endless horizon. The sky, often clouded and gray, adds to the mood of helplessness, as if the very heavens have abandoned them. At night, the ship is swallowed by darkness, the sea blending into the sky, leaving only the flickering glow of lanterns to push back against the encroaching void. Lighting plays a crucial role in reinforcing the film's horror. Unlike many modern horror films that rely on artificial lighting to create stylized scares, The Last Voyage of the Demeter leans into realism. The primary light sources are lanterns, candles, and moonlight, which cast long, flickering shadows across the ship's wooden walls. This creates an environment where visibility is constantly compromised. Characters peer into the dark, unsure of what might be waiting just beyond their reach. Characters peer into the dark, unsure of what might be waiting just beyond their reach. Dracula's presence is often felt before he is seen, the shifting shadows suggesting his movement before he emerges from the darkness. The audience is left in a state of constant unease, as their eyes strain to decipher whether something lurks just out of sight. The sound design further amplifies the setting's oppressive nature. The creaking of the ship, the distant crash of waves, and the howling wind create an atmosphere of unease. These natural sounds are familiar, yet they take on a sinister quality as the film progresses. The ship's groaning timbers become ghostly whispers. The sound of ropes tightening in the wind begins to resemble the breathing of an unseen predator. And then there is the silence. Moments when all noise fades and the crew realizes they are being watched. These silent beats are some of the most terrifying in the film, as they force both the characters and the audience to listen for the faintest sound of movement, knowing that death is near. Dracula's presence warps the setting, making the ship feel like a haunted house at sea. As he preys upon the crew, the ship transforms. Once bustling with life, it becomes eerily still, its decks empty, its cabins filled with a growing sense of dread. Blood stains the wooden floors, the air turns heavy with the scent of decay, and the atmosphere grows darker, both figuratively and literally. The ship begins to feel like a rotting carcass, a place where death has already claimed its victims, even before the final blow is struck. The color palette of the film reinforces this sense of inevitable doom. Muted blues and grays dominate the visuals, giving everything a washed-out, lifeless appearance. There is a deliberate avoidance of warm colors, no bright sunsets, no golden candlelight, no comforting hues. Even the ship's wood, which might have had a rich, warm tone in another film, appears pale and lifeless under the cold lighting. This choice makes the few moments of bloodshed stand out even more, the deep crimson of fresh wounds stark against the desaturated world. As the film progresses, the Demeter itself begins to decay. The crew, once strong and determined, grow weaker, their bodies reflecting the ship's slow descent into ruin. The final act takes place in an environment that feels drained of all life. The ship, now barely holding together, seems to sink into darkness, its fate sealed. The final confrontation with Dracula is not just a battle between man and monster. It is a fight against the inevitable, a desperate struggle to escape a fate that was written the moment the ship set sail. One of the most striking uses of cinematography comes in the film's final moments. As the last survivors make their stand, the ship is framed against the stormy night, its silhouette barely visible against the roiling waves. Lightning flashes illuminate Dracula in brief, terrifying glimpses, each strike of light revealing a new horror. The storm itself seems to rage in response to the carnage, as if the heavens themselves are bearing witness to the destruction. The final shots leave a haunting impression, an empty ship, battered by the waves, its journey at an end. In the last voyage of the Demeter, the setting is not just a stage, it is an active participant in the horror. The ship's isolation, the vast and indifferent ocean, the creeping decay, and the oppressive use of light and sound all combine to create a cinematic experience that is as immersive as it is terrifying. It is a film that understands the power of atmosphere, using every element at its disposal to draw the audience into its nightmare. The Demeter does not merely carry its crew to their doom, it carries the audience with them, plunging them into the heart of darkness, where escape is impossible, and the only certainty is death. Filming The Last Voyage of the Demeter was just as intense and atmospheric behind the scenes as it was on screen. The production team set out to create a deeply immersive horror experience, and to achieve that, they made some bold choices that pushed both the cast and crew to their limits. The process of bringing Dracula's nightmarish hunt to life involved everything from grueling night shoots to unpredictable weather, practical effects that tested everyone's patience, and a commitment to authenticity that made the set feel as claustrophobic and isolated as the doomed ship itself. One of the most striking aspects of the film's production was the decision to build a life-sized, fully functional ship rather than relying entirely on CGI or green screens. The filmmakers believed that having a real ship would not only make the film look more authentic but also help the actors truly feel the weight of their character's situation. The ship, modeled after a 19th-century cargo vessel, was constructed on a massive water tank, allowing for realistic ocean movement while still giving the filmmakers full control over the environment. This decision, while visually stunning, presented countless challenges. The ship rocked unpredictably, water sloshed onto the decks, and long shooting hours in damp, cold conditions made every scene a test of endurance. The cast quickly realized that filming on a practical ship wasn't just about delivering lines, it was about maintaining balance, navigating narrow spaces, and adjusting to the constant motion. Many of them compared it to working on an actual voyage, with seasickness becoming a very real problem. Some actors even joked that by the time shooting wrapped, they had developed sea legs, instinctively swaying with the ship's movement even when they were back on solid ground. Adding to the film's realism was the decision to use practical effects for many of Dracula's terrifying appearances. The creature design was a combination of prosthetics, animatronics, and digital enhancements, but much of what the audience sees on screen was actually happening in real time on set. Actor Javier Botet, known for his work in other horror films like Mama and The Conjuring, played Dracula with a mix of eerie grace and unsettling physicality. His elongated limbs, unnatural movements, and towering presence made him a terrifying figure, even without digital effects. Many cast members admitted that even though they knew Botet personally, seeing him fully transformed into Dracula was unnerving. His prosthetic makeup took hours to apply each day, with layers of decayed skin, protruding veins, and sharpened teeth that turned him into a truly monstrous figure. During night shoots, the atmosphere became even more unsettling. There were multiple moments when actors forgot he was just a man in costume, especially when he would silently lurk in the shadows between takes, playfully creeping up on unsuspecting crew members to give them a genuine scare. Night shoots were a major challenge throughout production. Since much of the film takes place under the cover of darkness, the team had to work primarily during late hours. Shooting in the middle of the night, often in cold and wet conditions, drained the cast and crew, but it also helped them get into the right mindset. There was a strange energy on set during these hours, an eerie quiet that settled over the ship, broken only by the occasional sound of the waves lapping against the hull. This quiet was shattered, of course, whenever Dracula made an appearance, as the actors' reactions were often just as startled in real life as they were meant to be on screen. Despite the intensity of the film's subject matter, the camaraderie among the cast was strong. Between takes, they found ways to keep spirits high, whether it was cracking jokes about their grim fate in the story or finding humor in the countless times they had to retake a scene because of the unpredictable ship movement. The close quarters of the set forced everyone to bond quickly, leading to inside jokes and running gags that helped lighten the mood. One recurring joke was how often characters had to look terrified and exhausted, since they actually were. One of the most memorable and unexpected moments on set happened during a particularly intense scene. As the actors prepared for a dramatic confrontation, an unexpected visitor appeared, an actual bat, swooping down onto the ship. Given the nature of the film, the timing was uncanny. The crew laughed about how even nature itself seemed to be playing along with their horror story. Weather played a huge role in production difficulties. While the controlled water tank allowed the crew to manage some environmental factors, they still had to contend with sudden changes in wind, rain, and temperature. On more than one occasion, carefully planned shots had to be delayed due to fog rolling in at the wrong moment or unexpected downpours soaking the set. The unpredictable weather only added to the authenticity, though. Scenes of the ship battling against the elements felt raw and real because they actually were. The film's climactic moments, where the ship nears its final destination, were some of the most grueling to shoot. The combination of physical action, stunts, and emotional performances meant that everyone was giving it their all, even after weeks of exhausting night shoots. The finale, in which Dracula's terror reaches its peak, required multiple takes of actors running, climbing, and fighting under chaotic conditions. The physicality of these sequences left actors bruised and battered, but it also made the performances more believable. The director was adamant about maintaining a sense of realism, even in the smallest details. The ship's interiors were constructed to feel lived in, aged, and worn. Props were deliberately made to look like they had been used for years, and crew members were encouraged to handle objects roughly to give them a sense of history. Even the crew's clothing was treated with distressing techniques so that nothing looked too clean or new. In post-production, the filmmakers focused on amplifying the atmosphere they had worked so hard to create. While CGI was used sparingly to enhance certain shots, the majority of the film retained its practical effects, relying on shadows, lighting, and sound design to build fear. The eerie groaning of the ship, the distant cries in the night, and the unsettling silence before each attack were all carefully crafted to heighten the tension. Despite the hardships, the cast and crew were proud of what they had accomplished. When they finally saw the completed film, they recognized just how much their real struggles had contributed to the final product. The exhaustion, the fear, the claustrophobia. It had all been real, and it translated onto the screen in a way that couldn't be faked. By the time filming wrapped, the set of the Last Voyage of the Demeter felt like it had truly lived through the journey of its doomed crew. The ship, once bustling with activity, was now eerily quiet, waiting for its next voyage. The cast and crew walked away with more than just memories of a challenging shoot. They left with the satisfaction of knowing they had helped craft a horror experience that felt disturbingly real, both on and off screen. The haunting atmosphere of The Last Voyage of the Demeter is built on more than just its eerie visuals and bone-chilling suspense. At its core, the film is layered with themes that elevate it beyond a simple horror story. It delves into isolation, fear of the unknown, the clash between faith and science, and the inevitable pull of fate. These themes aren't just woven into the dialogue or the narrative. They are deeply embedded in the ship itself, the characters, and even the darkness that creeps into every frame. Isolation is one of the most overwhelming aspects of the film. The Demeter, a cargo ship bound for London, is not just a setting, it is a prison. Once the ship sets sail, there is no escape, no lifeline to the outside world. The crew members, despite their different backgrounds and beliefs, are all trapped together, forced to navigate an unfolding nightmare with no chance of reinforcements or rescue. The vast ocean surrounding them is both beautiful and suffocating, a reminder that they are utterly alone. This sense of isolation plays into the psychological horror of the film. The crew members are not just physically cut off from the world, they become emotionally isolated as paranoia seeps in. The longer they stay on board, the more fractured their relationships become. They suspect one another, hesitate to trust, and begin to question their own perceptions of reality. Dracula's presence is felt long before he strikes, a looming terror that turns each moment of silence into a threat. The ship becomes a floating madhouse where fear itself is as much a killer as the creature lurking in the shadows. Another crucial theme is the fear of the unknown. This is not just a monster story, it is a tale of mankind's helplessness in the face of something beyond comprehension. The crew of the Demeter consists of rational men, people who believe in what they can see, touch, and understand. They are used to navigating storms, fighting against nature's wrath, and overcoming the dangers of the sea. But Dracula is unlike anything they have faced before. He is an ancient, supernatural force, a predator who thrives in darkness and plays by rules they do not understand. This fear of the unknown manifests in different ways. Some characters cling to logic, refusing to believe in monsters even as their numbers dwindle. Others begin to break under the weight of their terror, their minds unraveling as they realize they are being hunted by something beyond their worst nightmares. The film plays with the idea that human beings are most vulnerable when they do not understand what they are fighting. The unknown is terrifying not just because of what it is, but because of what it could be. Closely tied to this is the theme of fate versus free will. From the moment the Demeter sets sail, there is an eerie sense that the crew is doomed. It is as if their journey was cursed from the very beginning, a slow march toward an inevitable, tragic end. This mirrors the legend of Dracula himself, a being who has lived for centuries, bound by a hunger that dictates his every move. Just as Dracula cannot escape his nature, the crew members seem unable to escape their fate. Throughout the film, there are moments where characters attempt to fight back, to change the course of their doomed voyage. They barricade doors, devise plans, and try to stay one step ahead of their predator. But no matter what they do, the ship continues to drift toward its grim destiny. This struggle between resisting fate and succumbing to it gives the film a relentless tension. It asks a chilling question. Is survival truly in our hands, or are some fates sealed before we even realize it? Another layer of the story is the battle between faith and science. The crew of the Demeter includes individuals with vastly different worldviews. Some are religious, seeing Dracula as an unholy force, something demonic that cannot be defeated by ordinary means. Others approach the problem with logic, searching for explanations, trying to understand the predator that stalks them in the night. This conflict plays out in their discussions, their actions, and ultimately, in their choices of how to fight back. Dracula himself is a symbol of this battle. He is both a creature of folklore and a living nightmare, something that defies both science and faith. His presence challenges every belief system. He is neither fully explainable nor fully unknowable. The film forces the characters to reconcile with the idea that not everything can be neatly categorized. Some horrors exist in the spaces between what we believe to be true. Beyond these thematic layers, the Last Voyage of the Demeter is rich with symbolism. The ship itself represents more than just a doomed vessel. It is a microcosm of the world, a place where different people are thrown together, forced to confront the harshest realities of life and death. Its journey across the sea mirrors the passage from life into darkness, from safety into terror. The further it drifts, the deeper its passengers descend into hopelessness. Dracula, of course, is the most potent symbol of all. He is not just a monster. He is death itself, a shadow creeping closer with every passing moment. His presence on the ship transforms it into a floating tomb, a place where life is systematically drained away. He represents both literal and metaphorical consumption, feeding on blood but also on fear, sanity, and the very will to survive. His attacks are not just physical but psychological. He preys on the crew's weaknesses, breaking them apart from the inside. In many ways, Dracula embodies the hidden horrors that people carry within themselves, their doubts, their fears, their vulnerabilities. He is the thing that lurks in the dark corners of the mind, the nightmare that follows even in waking hours. Light and darkness are also used symbolically throughout the film. The ship, bathed in candlelight and lantern glow, is a fragile bubble of safety in an ocean of endless night. But that light is always threatened, always at risk of being snuffed out. Dracula's power is strongest in the shadows, and every flickering flame represents the fleeting nature of hope. As the voyage continues, the darkness closes in, both literally and figuratively. Blood, naturally, is another powerful symbol. It is not just a source of sustenance for Dracula, it represents life itself, and how easily it can be taken. Every drop spilled on the deck of the Demeter is a reminder that death is creeping closer. The film does not treat blood simply as gore, it is a mark of survival, a sign of sacrifice, and a lingering echo of those who have already fallen. As the film builds toward its harrowing climax, all of these themes and symbols intertwine. Isolation gives way to desperation, fear of the unknown turns into acceptance of the inevitable, and the battle between science and faith dissolves in the face of sheer survival. The ship, once a place of order and routine, becomes a ghostly wreck, adrift in a sea that cares nothing for the horrors unfolding on its deck, and yet, even as the story reaches its grim conclusion, there is a lingering sense that something larger is at play. Dracula is not just a creature of the night. He is a reminder of mankind's fragility, of the things lurking just beyond the edge of understanding. The crew of the Demeter fought bravely, but in the end, they were merely passengers on a journey they never truly controlled. The film leaves viewers haunted not just by its scares, but by its deeper implications. It is a story about more than just a vampire on a ship. It is about what happens when people are stripped of everything familiar, left to face the abyss with no promise of salvation. It is about the things we cannot fight, the truths we do not want to face, and the shadows that always seem to catch up to us, no matter how hard we try to run. And as the ship drifts ever closer to its final, dreadful destination, the story serves as a chilling reminder. Some voyages never truly end. Some horrors, once unleashed, never fade. And some nightmares, no matter how far we try to escape them, are always waiting in the darkness, ready to rise again. The making of The Last Voyage of the Demeter was no ordinary filmmaking endeavor. From the very first frame, the creative team set out to craft a movie that would not only terrify audiences but also immerse them completely in its nightmarish, claustrophobic world. Every choice, every camera angle, every lighting decision, every note of the chilling score, was meticulously designed to enhance the creeping dread that pulses through the film. The result is a cinematic experience that feels less like a passive viewing and more like a descent into darkness, dragging the audience aboard the doomed ship with no hope of escape. One of the most striking elements of the film's visual storytelling is its use of cinematography. The entire film takes place on the Demeter, a confined space floating in the middle of an endless sea. To create the sense of isolation and doom, the cinematographer employed a combination of wide shots and intimate close-ups, shifting between the vastness of the open water and the cramped, suffocating quarters of the ship. The ship itself becomes a character, creaking, groaning under the weight of its cursed cargo, shrouded in an oppressive darkness that only grows thicker as the story unfolds. Lighting plays a crucial role in shaping the film's ominous mood. Since much of the horror unfolds at night, the filmmakers had to find ways to make the darkness both terrifying and visually engaging. Unlike many modern horror films that rely on excessive shadowy sequences where audiences struggle to see what's happening, The Last Voyage of the Demeter uses a careful balance of dim lantern light, moonlight glimmers, and bursts of fire to create an eerie, otherworldly glow. The ship's corridors are drenched in flickering illumination, casting long, shifting shadows that suggest movement even when nothing is there, until something is there. This masterful interplay of light and darkness heightens the tension, forcing the audience to peer into the shadows, always questioning whether something is lurking just beyond their vision. Dracula's presence is felt long before he fully emerges, hinted at through unsettling movements in the periphery, creeping shapes barely illuminated by the failing light. The camera work is equally intentional in amplifying the terror. The film's early moments feature more stable, composed shots, reflecting the initial order and routine aboard the Demeter. However, as Dracula's attacks intensify, the cinematography becomes more erratic. Handheld shots, rapid cuts, and sweeping camera movements create a disorienting effect, mirroring the increasing chaos and paranoia among the crew. The camera never lingers too long in one place, forcing viewers to remain on edge, never quite sure what might appear in the next frame. Perhaps one of the most haunting aspects of the film is its sound design. Long before Dracula strikes, the audience hears him. A distant, unnatural rustling in the ship's lower decks. A faint, guttural breath carried on the wind. The slow, deliberate sound of nails scraping against wood. When Dracula finally does attack, the soundscape erupts into pure chaos, screams, splintering wood, the brutal impact of flesh and bone. But just as quickly as the violence begins, silence often follows, an even more chilling reminder that whatever just happened was only the beginning. The film's score further enhances the experience. Unlike traditional horror scores that employ sharp, shrieking violins and sudden bursts of noise to startle audiences, The Last Voyage of the Demeter takes a more atmospheric approach. The music is deep, droning, almost ritualistic, echoing the ancient horror that stalks the ship. At moments of high tension, the score becomes nearly imperceptible, replaced by the hollow sound of the wind whistling through the ship's masts, a lonely, ghostly wail that seems to mourn the doomed souls aboard. Editing is another crucial element that shapes the film's relentless sense of dread. Unlike action-heavy horror films that rely on fast, frantic cuts, The Last Voyage of the Demeter often holds shots for just a beat longer than expected, forcing the audience to sit in the unease. These prolonged moments create an almost unbearable tension, lingering on a character's terrified expression, a hand slowly reaching toward a door, the quiet aftermath of an unseen attack. However, when violence does erupt, the editing shifts into sharp, sudden cuts, mirroring the crew's panic and confusion. The brutality of Dracula's attacks is amplified by the way they are presented. Glimpses of clawed hands flashing through the dark, blood splattering against wooden walls, the sheer speed with which he moves. The editing never lingers on the carnage for long, making it feel more shocking, more unstoppable, more real. The film's practical effects and creature design also play a major role in making Dracula a truly terrifying presence. Instead of relying entirely on CGI, the filmmakers opted for a combination of prosthetics, animatronics, and practical effects to bring the vampire to life. This decision gives Dracula a tangible physical weight that makes him feel more real. His movements are unnatural yet grounded, his presence looming over the crew like a living nightmare. His design eschews the traditional aristocratic vampire aesthetic. Instead, he is a predator, a gaunt, winged, bat-like entity with glowing eyes and an insatiable hunger. Box office performance is often a reflection of a film's ability to captivate audiences, and The Last Voyage of the Demeter had the challenge of carving its place in a landscape filled with franchise films and blockbuster spectacles. While it didn't skyrocket to record-breaking numbers, the film managed to resonate with horror enthusiasts, particularly those who appreciate atmospheric storytelling over cheap thrills. Its slow-burn approach, combined with its emphasis on mood and tension, appealed to fans of classic horror rather than modern jump-scare-heavy films. The film's marketing played into its strength, teasing Dracula's presence without fully revealing him, emphasizing the claustrophobic terror of being trapped at sea with something unspeakable. Word of mouth also played a role in its reception, with audiences divided between those who appreciated its deliberate pacing and those who expected a more action-packed horror experience. Despite the challenges of competing against major studio releases, The Last Voyage of the Demeter carved out a niche, praised for its craftsmanship and its dedication to old-school horror storytelling. It may not have been a box office juggernaut, but it earned a reputation as a film that lingers in the mind long after the credits roll, a slow, creeping terror that seeps into the subconscious. Ultimately, the film's success lies in the meticulous care taken in its filmmaking. Every element, cinematography, sound, editing, creature design, works together to create an experience that is immersive, haunting, and deeply unsettling. It is not just a horror film. It is a descent into darkness, an exploration of fear in its purest form. The Demeter's voyage may have been doomed from the start, but in the hands of skilled filmmakers, its tale lives on, a chilling reminder of the horrors that lurk in the shadows. The cast of The Last Voyage of the Demeter brought the doomed crew of the ill-fated ship to life with performances that carried the weight of desperation, fear, and the slow, sinking realization that they were trapped in a nightmare. Each actor delivered a performance that felt raw and authentic, making the horrors of their situation even more harrowing. It wasn't just about the fear of Dracula, it was about the psychological toll of being stranded at sea, hunted one by one, and knowing that there was no salvation waiting on the horizon. At the heart of the film was Corey Hawkins, who played Clemens, the ship's doctor. His performance was a standout, grounding the story with intelligence and quiet determination. Clemens wasn't a man of action in the traditional sense. He wasn't a warrior, he wasn't a fighter, and yet he was forced into a battle unlike anything he had ever imagined. Hawkins played the role with an understated strength, making Clemens a deeply sympathetic character. Through him, the audience experienced the creeping horror firsthand, witnessing the unfolding terror through the eyes of a man of science struggling to rationalize the unthinkable. Liam Cunningham, known for his grizzled, commanding presence in Game of Thrones, brought that same world-weary gravitas to the role of Captain Elliot. As the man responsible for the Demeter and its crew, he carried the burden of leadership, even as the situation spiraled into chaos. Cunningham played the role with an emotional depth that made the captain's journey tragic. He wasn't just trying to survive, he was trying to maintain order, to protect his men, and ultimately, to uphold a duty that was impossible to fulfill. His performance added layers to the film's emotional core, making his inevitable fate all the more gut-wrenching. Then there was David Dastmalchian as Wojciech, the first mate, a man hardened by the sea, suspicious and skeptical, yet loyal to the captain. Dastmalchian has a knack for playing complex, unpredictable characters, and in The Last Voyage of the Demeter, he brought a sense of realism to the role. He wasn't just another doomed sailor. He was a man with history, with regrets, and with a deep, sinking fear that he refused to fully acknowledge. His interactions with the rest of the crew created a believable dynamic, adding tension to an already volatile situation. Aisling Franciosi portrayed Anna, a stowaway who became an unlikely source of knowledge about the horror that stalked the ship. Her performance was layered. She was vulnerable yet fierce, terrified yet defiant. Franciosi managed to capture the complexity of a character who had already experienced unimaginable horror before the crew even discovered her presence. She became the key to understanding the nature of Dracula's threat, and her chemistry with Hawkins Clemens gave the film an emotional thread that wove through the blood-soaked chaos. And then, of course, there was Javier Botet as Dracula. A master of physical horror, Botet has played some of the most terrifying creatures in modern cinema, from Mama to the Conjuring franchise. His tall, lanky frame and ability to contort his body in unnatural ways made him the perfect choice for a Dracula unlike any seen before. This was no aristocratic, seductive vampire. This was a predator, a monstrous entity that lurked in the shadows, moving with an inhuman grace that sent shivers down the spine. Botet's Dracula wasn't just a creature of horror. He was ancient, relentless, and beyond comprehension. When the cast sat down for interviews, their enthusiasm for the project was evident. Many of them spoke about the physical and emotional challenges of filming in such a confined, practical environment. The production utilized a full-scale ship set built on a massive gimbal, which meant that the actors weren't just pretending to be tossed around by stormy seas, they felt it. Liam Cunningham described the experience as one of the most immersive shoots he had ever been on, recalling how the constant movement and claustrophobic atmosphere made it easy to tap into the fear and exhaustion their characters were meant to feel. Corey Hawkins talked about the psychological element of the film, explaining that what drew him to the role of Clemens was the way the character's rational mind was pitted against something entirely irrational. He spoke about wanting to bring a quiet heroism to the role, not the kind that comes from brute strength, but the kind that comes from resilience, intelligence, and an unwillingness to give in to fear. David Dastmalchian, ever the genre enthusiast, was especially excited about being part of a horror film that felt old school in its approach. He praised the practical effects, the eerie atmosphere, and the slow-burn dread that built throughout the film. "It's not about how loud the scares are," he said in one interview. "It's about how deep they crawl into your bones." Aisling Franciosi spoke about the intensity of filming certain scenes, particularly those that required interactions with Javier Botet in full Dracula prosthetics. "There were moments where I completely forgot it was Javier under all that makeup," she admitted. "He moved so unnaturally, and his presence was just so wrong. It really felt like we were trapped in there with something that shouldn't exist." Botet, ever the professional, had nothing but praise for the makeup and effects teams who transformed him into one of the most terrifying versions of Dracula to ever grace the screen. He described the process of sitting in the makeup chair for hours, the painstaking detail that went into creating his elongated features, his bat-like wings, his talon-like hands. He also revealed that much of his movement was inspired by real predatory animals, watching footage of wolves, bats, and even insects to perfect the way Dracula stalked and attacked his prey. When the film finally hit theaters, audience reactions were divided, but passionate. Horror enthusiasts praised its commitment to atmosphere and tension, comparing it to classic horror films that prioritized slow-burning dread over cheap jump scares. Many viewers appreciated the way the film stayed true to its gothic horror roots, embracing a sense of doom and inevitability that set it apart from more mainstream vampire movies. On the other hand, some casual moviegoers found the film's pacing too deliberate, expecting a more action-packed horror experience. Those who were unfamiliar with the source material or the Dracula mythology were sometimes caught off guard by the film's bleak, almost nihilistic tone. But for those who loved its style, its commitment to practical effects, and its chilling, isolated setting, The Last Voyage of the Demeter became an instant cult favorite. Online discussions about the film were lively, with many fans diving into debates about its ending, its connections to Dracula lore, and even the possibility of a sequel exploring Dracula's arrival in England. Some praised it as one of the most effective depictions of Dracula as a monster, rather than the suave, seductive figure seen in other adaptations. Others lamented that it didn't receive the mainstream attention it deserved, calling it an underrated gem in modern horror. In the end, The Last Voyage of the Demeter was a film that evoked strong reactions. Whether it was awe, terror, or frustration, it was a film that left an impression. And that, perhaps, is the greatest success any horror movie can hope for. As the eerie voyage of The Last Voyage of the Demeter comes to a close, the film leaves a lingering sense of dread that stays with its audience long after the credits roll. It's a movie that thrives on atmosphere, on the slow and inescapable feeling of doom, on the notion that sometimes, no matter how hard you fight, darkness will consume everything. This isn't just another vampire movie. It's a descent into isolation and horror, a tale of men trapped on the open sea with a force beyond their understanding. We've journeyed through every haunting element of this film, from its slow-burning tension to its chilling setting, from its masterful use of cinematography to its spine-tingling creature design. We explored how The Last Voyage of the Demeter brings a fresh take on the Dracula legend, presenting him not as a seductive aristocrat but as a relentless predator. The film doesn't concern itself with humanity's usual struggle against evil. It strips away the comforts of modern civilization and forces its characters to confront something primal, something inescapable. We delved into the film's plot, dissecting the relentless march of terror as Dracula picks off the crew one by one. The paranoia, the claustrophobia, the dawning realization that there is no escape, it all builds to an unforgettable climax that leaves the audience feeling as stranded and hopeless as the doomed sailors. Unlike traditional horror films that offer moments of respite, this story is relentless in its tension. Each moment without a scare is simply another moment spent dreading what comes next. The performances in The Last Voyage of the Demeter are nothing short of phenomenal. Corey Hawkins brought depth and intelligence to Clemens, making him more than just a victim. He was a man of science, a man of reason, struggling against an evil that defied explanation. Liam Cunningham's portrayal of Captain Elliot made us feel the weight of responsibility, the sorrow of a man who knew he was steering his ship toward an inevitable fate. David Dastmalchian's Wojciech added a hardened realism, a man too practical to believe in monsters until it was too late. Aisling Franciosi's Anna became a tragic figure, someone who had already suffered and yet fought to survive even when she knew the horrors that awaited. And, of course, Javier Botet's Dracula was a revelation, a grotesque, nightmarish vision of the infamous vampire, stripping away the romanticism and leaving only hunger, malice, and instinct. Behind the scenes, we explored how the filmmakers crafted such an immersive and haunting experience. The production team spared no effort in ensuring that the Demeter itself felt like a living, breathing entity, a creaking, groaning ship that seemed to whisper its own warning of impending doom. The set design, practical effects, and gimbal-mounted ship created an authentic, visceral experience for both the actors and the audience.